Warm? No, no, I'm not. I'm not warm. Are you guys warm? I'm not warm because it's only a real feel of 106, and I thought I didn't live in Florida. Welcome to Unbuckled Comics. If you're new, welcome. There's a liability form on the back table next to a couple of fans. Do you guys think the heat is on my mind? If you are returning, thank you for your continued support. I am Unbuckled Cape, your host of this comic book review podcast, and today we're going to be taking a look at Deadpool Spider-Man Volume 1. I lost my. Oh, okay, that's what I was looking for. It's actually Spider-Man slash Deadpool, and this is Don't Call It a Bromance Volume 1. Uh, Volume 0, which was kind of a prelude to it, is Don't Call It a Team Up. So we are taking a look at Spider-Man Deadpool, Don't Call It a Bromance Volume 1. And yeah, it's a fun comic. It's Deadpool, it's Spider-Man, it's kind of a bromance, even though they don't want you to call it a bromance. It's a little bit of a bromance, and it's a good comic. I had a lot of fun reading it. From what I remember, I did read it maybe like a month ago, something like that. Either way, before we head out on patrol, let's gather some intel first. LinkedIn or Linktree, not LinkedIn. LinkedIn's businessy, more businessy, maybe something like that. Maybe it's a help wanted place. Linktree, linktr dot ee / unbuckled comics is where you can find all of my links, including social medias and a Patreon. But do not sign up for Patreon. This is the last week for Patreon. I will be shutting it down July 1st. I will be canceling any subscriptions that have not been canceled, and we're just going to focus on the main show for a little bit as we adjust, as in the Unbuckled, adjust to life with having two bucklets. Bucklets? I like bucklets. Yeah, so that is where you can find the socials, which include Instagram, Facebook, and X. Oh, and YouTube. And YouTube. That's the other thing I want to plug. I do have a YouTube. I have been putting on some of the backlog episodes as well as making sure that the present ones are getting thrown on YouTube. So if you rather listen to over there, it is just a stagnant image. And then after the Comic Con, I'm going to figure out how to get a bunch of the other videos over there. And speaking of Comic Con, this is the week, guys. This is Hershey Comic Con. It is happening this Saturday and Sunday, June 29th and 30th, and I am pumped. Last week, I had the interview with BG Chichester. It was a great interview. He is a writer from many titles, and he holds a lot of talent in that writing. And actually, just last week, after talking to him, I read his Daredevil Batman book, and I really liked it. I thought it was extremely clever. I can't wait to actually meet him in person at the convention, say hi and talk to him about it a little bit, as well as meeting Keith Williams and Bob Allman, two other gentlemen that I interviewed. Both of them were inkers. If you haven't listened to those, go back and give them a listen. As well as coming up at the show, Saturday morning of the show, I will be doing live events. The first one is going to start somewhere around 9 o'clock, and I will be sitting down with Mr. Mark Wade. He is currently working on the ongoing series, World's Finest Batman and Superman. It is, my opinion, probably the best ongoing series that DC is putting out right now. He also wrote Kingdom Come for DC. He was on Fantastic Four way back that when, and just his line of credits is huge. So that will be a fun, maybe 20-minute Instagram live video. And then right after that, around 9:30, I am sitting down with the Jim Shooter. He was editor in chief at Marvel. He started a couple of different comic publishing companies after that. He was a writer before that. A very, very well known and quite frankly a superstar in the industry. And I cannot wait to sit down with both of them. And what I'll do is there'll be Instagram live videos, and then after the show, I will take them, put those two interviews together to make somewhere around a 40-minute interview where I'm interviewing both of them, and that will come out as a regular unbuckled and unscripted episode somewhere down the line, maybe September-ish, somewhere in there. I'll let the I'll kind of let the wave of the Hershey Comic Con drop, and then I'll remind you guys how great it was, or maybe I'll save it till like, maybe next winter when they announce the next one, something like that. But if you want them now, you will have to be available Saturday morning at 9 p.m. and 9:30. Let's see, what else do we have going on? Not a lot else. I owe you guys a case file on the Green Goblin. Green Goblin won our last Unbuckled tournament. That's going to be a little bit. I want to do so since I'm cutting Patreon, I'm moving Unbuckled and Unscripted back to a monthly show, and I'm completely cutting out the solicitations. Next month in July, somewhere around like the week before, 2 weeks before Deadpool and Wolverine movie drop, I want to run what was one of my favorite Unbuckled and Unscripteds we did on Patreon, which is what killed the MCU and how Deadpool won't save it. It's a great, great episode. I had a lot of fun with it. I got angry. I really think all of you guys that listen are going to enjoy it, and maybe you'll be a little upset with me. Maybe some of you won't listen anymore because of my opinions, because I don't think my takes were hot, but I said what a lot of people are thinking. So hopefully you guys are looking forward to that as well. Again, I am looking for maybe October to get your case file on Green Goblin, and then we'll start up another tournament and we'll make it a bigger bracket, and you guys can vote for what you want your next case file to be. With that all said, I think I'm all caught up on everything I needed to talk about. So let's get into this extremely fun comic, Spider-Man Deadpool, Don't Call It a Bromance, Volume 1.
Spider-Man Deadpool Isn't It Bromantic, which is kind of like the subtitle for Spider-Man Deadpool Volume 1, was a pull winner for us. It took down Nightwing Traps and Trapezes, which was the Volume 1 to the New 52 Nightwing, Batman Venom, which is an older Batman story. I think I have it placed on my shelf before he even gets a Robin. I believe so, yes. So it's an early Batman story, and then it also went up against the new Fire and Ice limited series. I gotta be honest, I did not think Spider-Man Deadpool would win. I thought it was going to be either Batman Venom or Fire and Ice. I was very wrong. I think Batman Venom was runner-up. I don't think Fire and Ice had any votes, and maybe Nightwing had like a couple or one or whatever it was. If I sometimes I wish Patreon would show me who voted for what, because if I could hunt down each and every one of you that voted for Spider-Man Deadpool, I would smooch each and every one of you very, very passionately on the lips. I had completely forgot about how good this story is. And after reading a couple of darker tales over the last month or so, I needed something like this that made me genuinely laugh and chuckle at the witty banter between Spider-Man and Deadpool. Of course, we're going to get to that here in a little bit. Just a little side note, there is a Volume 0. It's Spider-Man Deadpool, Don't Call It a Team Up, Volume 0. As far as I know, I don't think there's any connection. It's a bunch of like pre-crossover stories that happened before this story arc. That was confusing, Cape. Say it better. So Deadpool and Spider-Man Deadpool and Spider-Man crossed over a bunch of times prior to this story arc. I forget how many volumes, trade paperbacks there are in this story arc. I don't even know if I knew. I didn't look it up. I only have 0 and 1, and I remember 0 more than I remembered 1. And I remembered that I wasn't a big fan of Don't Call It a Team Up, but I read it a couple times, got Volume 1, read it, and I have no idea why this comic has left my brain. I'm struggling with English today. Great. It's a good thing podcasting doesn't depend on good speaking in English. Writer. Well, we have Joe Kelly. Joe Kelly spent quite a bit of time on Amazing Spider-Man and Deadpool, Action Comics, Justice League of America, the Justice League of America run that started with Grant Morrison, Supergirl, I Kill Giants, Daredevil, and Wonder Woman. The artist is Ed McGuinness. I know we have talked about Ed McGuinness before. Oh, I see it. Amazing Spider-Man, Hulk, Superman slash Batman. That's the Public Enemy Superman slash Batman storyline, along with Supergirl in there. Deadpool, which I want to say maybe Deadpool Classics is where we had his name before. Guardians of the Galaxy, Thundercats, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and JLA Classified. So, as I said earlier, starting off with issue number 1, the very first note that I have written for you guys is thank you, thank you. I love the toilet jokes. I love the boner jokes. The Spidey Deadpool banter is absolutely epic. And the cool thing is about it is I read this book and I don't hear Ryan Reynolds' voice. I hear the Deadpool voice that was used in Ultimate Spider-Man. I believe that was the title of that cartoon. There was a Spider-Man cartoon in the 2000s that actually had an episode with Deadpool in it, and he's wacky and goofy. Obviously not the Deadpool that we are very familiar with today. A PG Deadpool, but that's the voice I hear because of how wacky he is in this, and he's not the psychopath that we see in the Deadpool solo titles because he is with Spider-Man. So when writers are taking comics and they're doing big crossover events like this for two characters, Spider-Man is a character that almost any age can sit down, read, and enjoy. Well, you can't take a character that is rated, let's call it PG for now. You can't take a PG character and an R-rated character and moosh them together and end up with R rating. That doesn't work for the Spider-Man reader. So I think for all intents and purposes, Joe Kelly did a wonderful job marrying the PG with the R. And it's PG-13. I would call it PG-13. Some of the jokes are pretty, like I said, they're teenager jokes, but it's funny. None of it is like over-the-top gross-out humor. It's just the humor on this is very, very good. It's probably one of the funniest comic books I've read in a while. Maybe, honestly, one of the funniest that I've read, period. And you're going to find out why, but that comes up towards the end, really. It starts off with Deadpool kidnapping Spider-Man to fight Dormammu. And they win because Deadpool shoves brains into the mindless ones, which are like Dormammu's minions. They're kind of like stone. Trying to think, I can picture something else in a different universe that they look exactly like. But if you ever played Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, the Black Order, that's what that one's called. The mindless ones are in that one quite a bit. They kind of look like stone/lava creatures. And Deadpool just runs around and shoves brains into them, and they become mindful ones. Okay, maybe that's not funny me saying it to you here and now, but I audibly laughed when I read that because that's hilarious. Taking the mindless ones and Deadpool talking about how he raided a morgue before they showed up, and he's pulling brains out of the pockets of his utility belt and shoving them in there, and then these mindless ones turning to Dormammu and like questioning what motivation do they have for this kind of work. Are they getting dental? Like it's so outrageously funny, and Deadpool, it works so well. And then Spider-Man is everybody else, right? You're reading that book and you're rolling your eyes. Spider-Man's doing the eye rolling for you. It is just so beautiful. When Deadpool kidnapped Spider-Man, Spider-Man was fighting with Hydro Man. And when they get back to our realm, Hydro Man like soaked up a sewer plant, and he is now Hydro Sewer Man, I guess. It's a wild first issue, and it ends with Deadpool having a hit on Peter Parker, which is where we get our inciting incident. Issue number 2, Parker has a giant tech company, and he's kind of like Tony Stark in this book. He has a big tech company, but no one knows he's Spider-Man, and, he's doing all this stuff. And a new watch that his company developed comes out, but it ends up causing people to have, like, fear-inducing hallucinations, where Deadpool springs into action and actually saves Peter Parker and Miles Morales. So we get a little bit of Miles in this book, and Yes, Miles is only in issue number 2, but Miles is here, which was really cool. This was actually the first book I read with Miles in it. They After Deadpool saves Peter and Miles, Peter and, well, Spider-Man and Deadpool track this signal to Mysterio, who Deadpool hilariously runs over with the Deadpool buggy, which is actually just like the Spider buggy, and Spider-Man and Deadpool are having arguments on, who copied who, when it's really Deadpool copied Spider-Man, but of course he's claiming that Spider-Man's always copying him. Deadpool performs emergency CPR to out of characterly save Mysterio. And this is where we get into this is a different Deadpool than what we're used to. This Deadpool is trying to turn a new leaf and become a good Avenger, and he is part of the Avengers at this point. This is that weird time where, like, Deadpool is part of the Avengers, and this is also the time of Jane Foster being Thor. So there's Lady Thor. It's not quite the Marvel universe that is the most familiar to most people, I guess is a good way to put it. This is what the Marvel universe was when this was written, but it's none of that really has much of an impact on the story. After they save Mysterio, Spider-Man swings off, and Deadpool snoops around Parker Industries, and he finds this, like, dismembered person with a bunch of scientists in the basement, and it triggers him to accept the hit on Peter Parker. On issue number 3, Deadpool actually convinces Spider-Man to go with him on a, kind of like a ride-along thing, to try and convince Spider-Man that he is changed. And again, it's more funny, like, banter, and just, it's hard to explain without you actually reading it. So Deadpool has his own special team, and they're mercs for hire, but in this case they're not actually murdering people. They're trying to liberate a village in Bolivia, if I remember correctly. And Deadpool has his, like, minions kind of paid off to, like, go over pre-written lines about how much they love Deadpool and how great he is and how he changed. And it's just, again, it is just more hilarity. And this book at issue number 3, and there's 6 of them in this trade, feels more like just a fun romp around where the plot isn't going anywhere, and I'm completely and totally okay with it. At the end of this issue, though, we do get a deep moral stance from Deadpool when Peter Parker realizes, and the villains that they're fighting here is Sticks and Stones, but they're a very altered, mutantized Sticks and Stone, which is a reoccurring Spider-Man villain. You see them a lot with the symbiotes. I think it's Vengeance of Venom is where they pop up, and that's probably the biggest appearance for them. Yeah, I'm going to go with that. Vengeance of Venom, that's where they show up, and that's probably their most famous appearance. They also work for the guy that has stalker issues with Mary Jane, but that also might have been Vengeance of Venom. Anyway, that's a different story. So, as they are trying to defeat Sticks and Stones, Spider-Man realizes that the people that hired Deadpool to save them from this, like, kind of a new religious cult that used Sticks and Stones as enforcers was a drug company. And Spider-Man is freaking out because they're saving people that are making drugs, where Deadpool makes Spider-Man realize that a lot of these people don't have a choice. It's either work for these drug lords or they die, and Deadpool's just saving them, not necessarily saving the drug lords. And it really has an impact on Spider-Man and his character to switch over from I absolutely despise Deadpool to maybe I'm wrong about this guy. At the end of this, Deadpool is still actually trying to figure out how to kill Peter Parker, and one of the points of him taking Spidey on this ride-along was so that one of his accomplices could see if they could find Peter without Spider-Man, to see, like, how well watched he is. And again, he doesn't actually make the connection that they're one and the same. He just thinks that he's that well guarded. Issue number 4 is large and far my favorite issue in this whole thing. Deadpool takes Spider-Man to a club and gives him the image. I forget what it's called. The image inducer, something like that. Basically, a thing that Spider-Man wears around his neck, and it projects a hologram over him so he looks completely different. Deadpool gives him a new name and a backstory to go in on a double date. Even though Deadpool is married in this, he's married to a succubus queen or princess or something like that. Not Lady Death, actually, which comes into play in this story as well, though. So, Deadpool takes Spider-Man to a club and introduces him to a vampire woman who Spidey very fastly and immediately falls in love with. Deadpool also invites his hall pass. He has 5 of them. And I think she's number 2 on it, but it's Lady Thor. And he calls it free pass in there. But also on the list, like, they don't show it because Deadpool's speech bubble is talking over it. But, like, Spider-Man with something else is number 5. So, like, it's a stipulation that Spider-Man is his number 5 free pass. There's Thor, if Thor was a woman, which in this case it's Lady Thor or Jane Foster. So she is an Asgardian, and he beeps her saying that he has an emergency, an Avengers emergent, or she's an Asgardian. She's an Avenger, and he pages her through the Avengers hotline saying that he has an emergency, and really it's just to get her there so he could have a date with her because this is part of her free pass, or his free pass. I'm trying to remember what the other ones were. I'm not going to be able to remember, but they are so funny. So not only in this comic is the humor in the dialogue, you have to be watching the backgrounds as well, and seeing some of the stuff going on in the background is just, it's too much. It is so funny. The vampire that Spider-Man is there on a date with and the Lady Thor actually hate each other from like centuries ago, of some for Asgardian using the succubuses as slaves or something like that. And they start fighting, and Deadpool turns out that he owns the club and has a giant mud pit in the middle of the club that like opens up from hatch doors. And his whole plot in this was to get the 2 women to fight in mud. And Spider-Man is so like when they're like questioning what's going on, he's like, I think you're supposed to back up into the mud, please. And he is so smitten with this vampire woman. It's so funny. So the 2 ladies end up making a temporary truce, and they punish the men by making them dance. And it's so out there and off the beaten path from a typical Spider-Man comic, I think, but it's so right for a Deadpool comic to be going this way. The number 4 issue does end with a kind of a surprise. Deadpool shows up to Peter Parker's door and shoots him and kills him. Like, didn't see that coming. So apparently what happens is that the trance that Spider-Man was put under by the vampire was supposed to make him a little like more lethargic, and then when Deadpool would beat him back to Peter Parker's place and kill him, in reality Deadpool didn't beat him back there, but Spider-Man Spider-Sense didn't work because he was still kind of under a trance. And when Peter Parker's soul did not end up going to hell and being tortured the way it should have, Deadpool has his wife resurrect him so he can shoot him again. So he kills him twice in the same issue. And again, his soul is taken somewhere else. And here, the guy that has hired Deadpool is posing as Peter Parker to run the company, to do something evil and sinister, I'm sure. We never really get to know what it truly is. And Deadpool finds out that Peter Parker is a pure soul, and he like turns into like a Spider-Man figure and battles a Mysterio that has been taken over by this guy. And it's kind of weird, but again, tracks for a solid Deadpool comic with Spider-Man in it. This comic is definitely a little more Deadpool than Spider-Man, but it's still a lot of fun. It's a great issue, and it leads us into issue 6 where Spider-Man is angry, and at one point Deadpool actually describes it better than what I can. He calls him At one point, he says, okay, now you can go back to being Wolverine or something like that. Like, Spider Man is acting more like Wolverine than he is Spider Man. And they end up fighting these horrid beasts that are genetically altered by Patient Zero. We never find out who Patient Zero is. We just know that he is genetically altering people with both Spider Man and Deadpool DNA. And that's the end. So I have no clue why I never went on and got Volume 2. Not a clue. I can guarantee that even though this story ends unfinished, even though this is. Well, that's just it. That is my only gripe with this book, is that it's inconclusive and I end up being left with more questions than what I have answers. But there isn't a single panel of this that I did not enjoy. Nope. I just thought about it. I loved every second of this. It's funny without being forcefully funny. Like, the jokes and quips weren't so consistent is the word in my head. It's not the word I want. Weren't so. I don't know. I'm going to change my sentence. The jokes and quips weren't so frequent. That's the word I wanted. They didn't happen so frequent that it like felt like it overstayed its welcome. You know what I mean? This story was funny because it was funny. It wasn't like it was really, really trying to be funny and it hit on a couple of things. I thought like every little joke in this was funny. You also get a little bit of backstory with Deadpool that I kind of left out earlier, where Deadpool ends up making a deal with Lady Death, who he used to be. I think they were married at one point. And then, like, there's, a little bit of repercussions with his current wife. I think her name is Shalka, something like that. But she's a fun character, too. Their interactions with each other, you see her in, I think, every issue. And she is, like, genuinely in love with who Deadpool is now and is not so much sure about him changing into being more of a hero figure, but, like, still kind of supports what he wants to do. But she's still, like, a Empress of the Damned or Empress of a Demon or something like that is her title. But their relationship is actually great as well. So this is such a fantastic comic that I can't believe it has been years since I've read it, and I can't believe that. Like, what am I doing? And in fact, what are you doing for not reading this comic? And that is where this is going to land. What are you doing? Before I move on, we were discussing not too long ago in the Discord about the rankings, and just in case you are someone that has hopped on in the midway point here and hasn't actually heard all of them, we rank comics in 4 groups. What are you doing? Which means, like, what are you doing? Go out, buy it now, read it. Get on it, which I typically take that as, like, this should be one of the next 5 comics you read. And then I have pick it up. Pick it up is like, if you see it, grab it, pick it up, flip through it. You make the decision whether you want to read it. Give it a trial read if you can, like, get it from a library, something like that. You're in the comic store, you pick it up, read the first couple of pages, then decide. It's when a comic is pick it up, it's either, yeah, you should read it at some point in your life, or you should attempt to read it at some point in your life. And then, of course, our bottom tier is pass on it. So just to give everybody a refresher or let you know for the first time if that is the case, those are our rankings. And Spider-Man, Deadpool, don't call it a bromance, sits solidly in my what are you doing category. Until next week, guys, get out there and save the world, you bunch of heroes.